Awesome. Thank you so much, guys, for joining. We're live now. I want to kick things off with a comment that Anthony made almost 12 months ago. And the comment said, we see lots of results, 11.6 million impressions in the last year. So I would assume that is almost 2023, like the whole of year. 150 plus companies we've worked with who came directly from LinkedIn. We've also never said buy our service in any single post. So the reason I start with this is you guys have clearly seen results, right? Have you guys recently looked at your numbers? Like that was for the year 2023, I would assume. So what are those numbers looking like right now?
I have to look. I haven't looked in, it's been a while. Anthony, I'm curious where you're at. We used to track it a little bit more closely, but now we have a pretty good idea of like roughly what it is on a given month or week. But let's see what the last.
It's probably similar. And we've experienced something that a lot of other creators have talked about, that when you cross the 50,000 mark, follower mark, that LinkedIn might not push you as hard as you were when you were smaller. And we've heard this from a bunch of different people. Now, is that something in the algorithm, or is there something inherent to like posting content that, I don't know, as much content as it takes to get to 50K, you kind of wear out the audience or something? So like we don't see the same level of spikes as we used to in the early days. And a lot of creators, like I've mentioned my brother a couple times on different podcasts related to LinkedIn. He started building his following. He started from zero, and his posts, he'll still get, like, if he has a really good post, 500, 1,000, 1,500 new followers in a day. And even when we see similar levels of impressions, we usually don't jump that much in follower count. So it might also be that LinkedIn is showing our posts mostly to our existing followers rather than new people like they would with someone who's smaller. So it goes up and down, but yeah, it's probably in the similar range. I don't think we've seen a big jump or spike. It's sort of remained around that same level of impressions, I would say, even though we've maybe doubled our audience size technically.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned that you don't see that those engagement levels spike anymore, because right now at the stage that you guys are seen as thought leaders within your space, right? So to you personally, Rob and Anthony, does it matter that your impressions are not spiking like before? Because I would assume that people who do see your content are already in your target audience.
Well, I would say that the thing that really matters, and to not sound so cliche, but how many clients are booking, right? And
exactly,
that has remained remarkably stable month over month. And you could even say maybe has gone up a little. So even though we might not get as viral as posts, what we have found is that people becoming clients, going from just watching to then actually booking a call with us, is a long journey, like sometimes a 6 to 9 month journey of them just interacting with our content. And so it feels like that really hasn't changed. And so whether we're showing our content to new people or the existing audience, we still month over month are getting a similar amount of client engagements, people booking calls, close rate, and all that type of stuff. Would you agree with that, Rob?
100%. There's a long tail effect to this as well. I've noticed recently, kind of the end of last year, a lot more people, what we used to hear, people would come to us, I've been following you for 6 months, 9 months. I love what you do. I'm ready to work with you. Of late, we've been getting a lot more, you guys worked with an old colleague of mine. You come highly recommended. So a lot of these more word of mouth referrals, where we're starting to work with a lot more people who haven't even been following our content that long, which there's a whole conversation there of what that means for us from an education standpoint to make sure that they get the process and our point of view. But I attribute that still to the reach that we have on LinkedIn, and it's starting to proliferate just naturally outside of the media platform.
And you guys' content strategy is pretty straightforward, right? And I think Anthony mentioned this in the same comment back then as well. You guys talk about the problems that your target audience faces, and then you talk about how you guys solve it. So it's pretty simple for you guys. But most creators, founders specifically, in the beginning, they worry about, well, if we are so niche and targeted, people might not really like our content. We might not get a lot of engagements. So when you guys started in the beginning, what was your strategy? Was it the same as it is today, or did you guys like evolve with time?
Yeah, I'll take this one first, and then Anthony has an interesting story about how we actually got started. It was sort of almost an accident or an act of desperation for for us and Anthony in a different role in a different company.
Mm-hmm.
But for us overall, when we were doing LinkedIn in the beginning, we were treating it a lot like a feedback loop for figuring out what service to build. Because when we started, we didn't have a service. In fact, we had a collection of services that we were trying to sell for this other agency that could fall under the product strategy umbrella. And so we were treating each post as like, post it, see if anything resonates, if anything sticks, and then use it as fodder to then double down and figure out what to write about. And so we started from product strategy, then got into product marketing, but still huge surface area, then got into positioning and messaging, still a big surface area, then got into home pages and all these other things. We tried a bunch of stuff. And what we found is every time we went more and more narrow, the engagement and spikes went way, way up. And so it's counterintuitive that we try and talk about this for other content creators and founders, et cetera. They think they have to go broad to keep potential revenue opportunities afloat, but it's usually the very thing that's preventing them from creating good content and preventing them from creating ultimately a good product and creating some sort of repeatability. So riches are in the niches for us. And so again, more and more specific is kind of key to the game, both in how we build products and how we create our content.
Interesting. Anthony, what is your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, it's the other thing is that you have to think about your competition, right? So if I go out and I say, I want to be known for financial advice on, let's say, YouTube, there are so many people competing in that space, especially if you ever open YouTube. I don't know, your algorithm might be different than mine, but I get videos like this all the time. And so in these big, broad topics that apply to so many people, the competition is just so much higher. And so you take this to LinkedIn, and there's tons of people posting about marketing in a general sense. There's very few people posting about positioning for B2B SaaS startups. And so when we shrink the pool, yes, maybe we don't have 50 million people who could potentially be interested in this topic, but we don't need 50 million people to build a successful business. So our posts maybe get seen by a couple 100,000. But again, in our business model, we sell primarily consulting and, not like, 10K or less deals. And so we don't need thousands or hundreds of thousands of customers to make this business extremely profitable. So for us, you shrink the pool, and there is people who really, really care about that topic, and there's almost no competition. Like we could probably name the 10 people who post about this. And so can you be better than those other 10? The bar is way lower to be better than 10 people than it is to be better than, 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 other creators who are all talking about the same thing.
Interesting. Well, so at what point, when you started creating content specifically, and understanding that, maybe we need to niche down, was there a pivotal moment where you thought, maybe this LinkedIn thing is actually going to kick things off for us?
Anthony, why don't you take that one? Because I think the story of how we started was interesting, kind of non-traditional for many folks, and then we kind of honed it as we went. But you have a
for sure. So Rob and I, we launched Fletch out of another agency. So we were basically incubated in a different agency that did product design and product development and product management for all sorts of different customer types. And so we had been trying to get this thing off the ground, and Rob and another guy on the team had tried a couple of different avenues of getting pipeline. And so one of the ways that they did it, they came up with this really clever cold outreach strategy where they would pick a hyper-specific industry niche, and then they would build like a report on all the different players and how they all interacted with each other. And they would pitch this to CEOs and founders of companies in that space. Hey, we've created this report for your specific corner of the market. It features, quotes from these people. And they were able to like very consistently get meetings, but we still didn't really know what the product was, what the service was actually going to entail. And so they'd get the meetings, try to scope out some problems. It was hard to find like a repeatable thing. So that didn't quite pan out, though it was very successful in getting meetings. It was hard to get it over that next hump. And then we also had tried creating, just content sort of in a vacuum. We posted it on our website, but no one really found it ever. There was no real distribution. And so eventually we were like, maybe we should try this LinkedIn thing. We had heard that people used it to get, influx of deals and interest in products or services. And Rob had been following a couple of people in this space, like people like Justin Welsh, who have built these giant careers on LinkedIn and things like that. So Rob had actually talked about like maybe this would be an avenue to test. And he had always been like, I want to create content and I don't know what it should be about and stuff like that. So I had done a lot of content in my previous roles, and so I felt a little bit more comfortable in the content creation space, but didn't really have nearly the amount of expertise that Rob did around like startups and things like that. So just to sort of test the waters, I did a couple posts on LinkedIn just about random things that were like loosely related to SaaS, not at all related to what we do today. And the first 2 posts actually got huge engagement, which is very not common. But the first one, I think, got like 250,000 impressions. It was like 1,000 plus interactions, all these different comments. I got tons and tons of followers, connect requests. And then I was like, wow, that was crazy. Let's try again. And I had one other good idea. I had like 2 good ideas. So I did the first one, it did decent. And then I did the second idea. And the second one also went like relatively viral, right? Not quite as big, but like, I can't remember, it was like 50,000 or 75,000 impressions. And then after that, we were like, wow, there's something here, because all these people started reaching out. And so Rob, he was like, I should start posting too. So Rob starts posting, and then neither of us really got much success for a while after that. But that initial taste of success was enough to be like, there's probably something here. So we start posting and trying out different themes. And Rob, I think Rob and another guy on our team had talked about this concept of positioning. Maybe we should talk about positioning and post about that, how companies position. And we were like, well, how do we publicly audit the positioning of companies? Where would we look to see how they're positioned? And the most natural place that we could think to find how a company talks about their positioning would be, what do they say on their website? So we started doing like reverse engineering. Can I tell how this company is being positioned based on what they say on their homepage? Will I understand what the pros of what their product is, who they're for, what do they replace, all those types of general, like if you think of a positioning Mad Lib, we are X type of company for X type of customer. We are for this specific use case. Could we suss out what those answers would be? And so we started doing posts where we would take a picture of someone's website, we'd make all these comments, and we started realizing that it was extremely difficult to figure out who a product was for, and in a lot of cases, what the product even does. So many extremely opaque websites with really no real detail about what they do, and people would read them and you'd be like, I don't understand. And so we would post these things, we'd tag the companies, we'd offer suggestions. And the funny thing is, before we got clients reaching out to work with us, me and Rob got several.
Is Anthony
Did he cut
stuck
out
for
for
me?
you as well, Galib?
Oh yeah. He cut off
Okay.
for me as well.
We'll see if he comes back. I'll finish his thoughts.
Okay.
Because where he's going is, before we even got clients where founders are like raising their hand and they're like, hey, I want to work with you, we were getting job offers.
No way.
And so all of these startups were reaching out and they're like, I love what you do. Like, we have this problem of sorts with positioning. We don't know what to put on our website. And, in the beginning, again, we didn't know the service. We didn't even really know we had ideas of potentially building a service, but we didn't know what it was. So at the time, it was like, do we take these job offers? We didn't know. But that was sort of like part of the journey to us, like listening for that signal of what people care about. Now we don't get so many anymore. Nobody wants to hire us. We're unemployed.
Yeah, I think they're probably scared of approaching you to, hey, come work for us. But this brings me to we can wait for Anthony a bit, but I would love to ask you something, Rob. This makes me think about 2 things, right? Number one is you guys started creating content. Oh, there he is.
I don't know what happened. My whole computer just turned off.
We have you now.
I've never seen it happen. Literally the whole
Rob
screen
finished
just
your
black.
thought. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's okay. No worries. No, Rob finished your thought.
Great.
That'll happen when we spend 3 years together. So job offers. But Galib, you were telling me what this triggered for you.
Yeah, exactly. This made me think about 2 things, Rob and Anthony. Number one is you guys created content, and then you figure out with time what exactly you want to narrow down on. Okay. So in that scenario, how long did it take for you guys to actually start seeing some results when it came to your founder bands? And then another question off the back of that is, if somebody already had everything mapped out, they already were providing something as a service, they were a founder, but they wanted to leverage LinkedIn, how long would they need to be consistent on LinkedIn, like a realistic timeline?
Yeah. So I'll lay this out, all those questions kind of in phases of how it worked for us. And Anthony, just chime in if you're still there, if
If
I'm
he's still
kind
there.
of breaking any of the timelines because you're a bit frozen. From when we started posting outside of Anthony's outliers, which again, for context, we're not related to positioning. He did one on like note taking and another, I can't remember what the other one was on, but like very SaaS adjacent. And so when we started posting, it was probably 6 months of effectively posting into the void where, you know, it was like, oh my, like getting to 10 likes was like, oh my gosh, huge. Getting to 20 was amazing. And we were like slowly like stair stepping that up. What happens in that phase is you start to meet like other early peers, kind of early adopters to your thoughts and what you're thinking. And, you know, looking like our writing and our insights just weren't that good, and which I think shows growth overall. It was around the 6-month mark or so where we started to get these hand raisers where a founder would see a post, they would send us a DM and they're like, hey, I'm dealing with this right now. Can we chat? And we get on a call. And again, we didn't have a service. And so these calls, the way Anthony and I took them was listen for 10 minutes, ask them what's going on, what resonated, figure out what problem they actually had, and then pitch them a service. And so from that month, so first 6 months into the void, there was then this hand raiser, bunch of different problems out there. And so Anthony and I this probably went on for maybe 3 to 4 months where we were dynamically pitching new services and taking random calls. Some of it positioning and messaging, some of it homepages. We did a pricing project. We're all over the place, literally just figuring out what resonates, what works. And it was, looking back, it was both painful and so much fun because at that point we started getting, Anthony, I don't know, 5 sales calls a day each.
Yeah.
And so Anthony and I were literally like taking calls. You know, we get off the phone. I call up Anthony and be like, hey, here's what I learned. What did you pitch? Like, did anything work? Did we sell anything type? And we just used that as constant feedback loop of the market that we knew we were trying to serve, which was these early stage startups and founders. And we just found themes and patterns. And we just made decisions of like, oh, it seems like we could sell this. It seems like we could sell this. And we whittled our way into positioning and messaging and then ultimately homepage messaging. Like, so again, that was another 5 months of that as we continued to post. And then probably the last year or so, maybe 15 months, it has just been iterating on the service and process overall, which many folks who follow us, they think, oh my gosh, you guys have it all figured out. You know, behind the scenes, and if you really dig into our content, we were changing things very regularly,
On the go.
breaking down the frameworks and processes and building them back up. And I think that's just a natural progression that any founder who's building a new product or service has to go through. Very painful. And then I would say we finally have reached maybe the last 3 to 6 months, Anthony, repeatability, where the model's pretty stable. We're only making like small tweaks as we go. And now we're at this point where we can start to think about scale and process automation and that sort of thing. And so that for us has been a 2.5 year journey. You asked about consistency of posting and what that looks like. Anthony and I spent basically the last 2 years posting every day. And there's outliers. Like, I mean, I haven't posted in the past 2.5 weeks. Like the holiday crushed me.
Yeah.
Went on a honeymoon last year. Didn't post during that. You know, Anthony's about to go on paternity leave as well. And so like there's lulls, but overall, like you got to show up consistently. And our whole thesis was to show up with something new. We don't do a lot of repurposing at all. And that's what I think has led to some of our success, as well as some of the tactical things that perhaps we'll get into around like how to approach LinkedIn.
If you could go back in time and you already had figured out, let's say, what service you were going to provide, realistically speaking, how long would it take you if you were to start from scratch on LinkedIn?
Assuming the service solved a real problem that there was an existing market for, I bet we could squeeze that 6 months of posting into the void into maybe 90 days, 60, 90 days, or even better. Like, because once you figure out like the approach, and Anthony alluded to this earlier on, is like, we don't talk about our service in our posts. All we're doing in our posts is spotlighting a problem that our market has, and then giving insights into why it's a problem, why it sucks, what happens if you don't fix it, and then potential pathways to solve it, like giving all that away for free. And that's what creates the awareness, where if someone actually has the problem and they're looking for outside help, then they find us, then we can talk about our product. And so, yeah, I would say we could probably shrink that down to about 2-3 months. But Anthony, what do you think? It's an interesting question.
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned my brother before. Like, he just started posting, and I think he's maybe 5 months in, and I think he went from 0 followers, basically a brand new account, and I think he just broke 9,000. And
Oh,
so
nice.
that's probably 5 months. And I think he's doing maybe 3 to 4 grand a month from his service. And he's doing something very
Okay.
different. He's doing public speaking coaching. So different
Okay.
space. He's using a very similar strategy as us, where he does a lot of these like deeper infographics, really dense, packed with value posts, which is like that's like our main strategy, is like give away as much value for free. Give away so many tools that people won't buy from us because they're like, well, I don't need to buy it from them. They told me exactly how to do it myself. That's kind of like the bar that you should go with. And any amount of clients you'll lose, you will gain in other people who are like, I don't have time to do this myself. And these people clearly know what they're doing because they've shown me exactly what they're going to do. The barrier of risk and fear is all completely reduced because I know exactly what they're going to do and how they work and who they've worked with and all the secret sauce. So like, I think, I would probably say if we were starting from scratch, it's tricky because you really do need a fresh LinkedIn account, right? And I don't think a company account really works as well. So like,
Doesn't have
if
the same
Rob and
reach.
I were going to do it, if we were going to do a new business, maybe we're creating we always joke around, a new LinkedIn profile, someone named like Tony Pierski or something, like a combination of the two of us, and maybe AI meld of a new person to launch the business. Because it would obviously be starting from scratch would mean probably needing a fresh account or like heavily pivoting what we're doing today, which I don't think is necessarily a smart thing unless we're ready to kill this business.
Yeah. Love that. And so see, I want to get your perspective on this, both of you guys. Is whenever I'm on sales or discovery calls, some founders say, well, we created content for 2 or 3 months and then we saw no ROI. ROI could be them being seen as a thought leader, perceived as a thought leader, or generating some sort of money through their founder brand, knowing that they already have other cash flow sources, right? They say we post for 2 or 3 months, we see no ROI, and now we think like the platform isn't for us. So do you think really for somebody to start for 2 or 3 months, knowing that they weren't creating content strategically, they were throwing random stuff out there in the hopes of it sticking, let's say, right? So what would your answer to that be if somebody tells you, well, I don't think the platform's for me because I posted for 3 months and I didn't see any ROI?
Yeah, I've got 2 thoughts on this, and then Anthony, you can go. The first question I have is the content any good? Because like the quantity doesn't matter, and what Anthony and I have realized, because we've just worked with so many startups and we get to exposure to all these industries and different things, the bar for good content is pretty low, and no one puts the effort in to solve for it. There's this fear of giving too much away for free. And there's just this lack of consistency. There's all this AI regurgitation of bad stuff. And if you have shitty content, of course you're going to have shitty results, even if you're consistent. And then the second piece is definitely consistency. Like when we started doing this, and Anthony alluded to it earlier, but once I started writing, I wanted to keep writing. I saw this as a 10-year investment, not a 90-day investment to see what works. And I think founders have this short-term look, not just on posting on LinkedIn, I think on marketing in general. They think it's this thing of like, oh, I'll turn it on. I'll start running ads. It'll be great. Oh, I'll start posting content. It's like, that's not how it works. Quality is going to trump, especially today where all this stuff is getting just regurgitated through AI. And so to those founders there, I think it's being really honest and critical of would they even consume their own content? Is it helping anyone? Or are you just throwing out platitudes that make you sound sort of smart? And then there's like layers to that of usually it's too broad and that's why it's really crappy. Anthony, I don't know if you have a take on that.
Yeah, to the bar, and we actually live this out. The bar is not even would you consume the content yourself? Will people pay for this content? Because that's what it should be. It should be the posts on LinkedIn are so valuable that people will pay to have them. And what we did relatively early on is we started taking all of our posts and we put them in a giant Notion database, organized by different themes, and we sell it for $50. And I don't know, Rob, we've made like probably over 100 grand from selling $50 Notion databases of our content. So it's like, if your content would be worth purchasing, it has a really good chance of doing well on the algorithm. If nobody would ever buy it, you're probably not being helpful enough. You're probably not giving away enough. And so that's the sort of gauge that you want to go for. Make something that is so good that actually, if you sold it as a standalone item, not on a LinkedIn post, people would actually pay for it.
And does that come down to you talking about problems that your ICP faces and how you can solve it for them? Is that
Well,
it? Or
it's more like not how we could solve it for them. It's almost like, here's how you could solve it, right? You're
okay,
running into this problem. Here's the exact steps and exact tools that you will need to solve your own problem without ever working with me and Rob. And you just give them the secret sauce. And it does this weird thing that is very counterintuitive, that giving away the secret sauce actually makes more people want to buy from you, right? Which is what you would not expect. Like you should literally be like, this is exactly what you need to do. And I saw this I can't remember if it was I was watching a YouTube video, and it was basically about like, we had some mice in our basement. And then I was like, I wonder how I'll get rid of these mice. So I watched this YouTube video, and it was this like 30-minute, maybe an hour even. Here's how to mice proof your house. And it was the exact steps. And like 10 minutes into it, I was so like mentally burned out from seeing how much work was about to happen.
yeah,
That I was like, if this company was anywhere near me, I would have called them that moment and hired them on the spot. And that's how it should feel. Like you give the impression of like, the really gung-ho people can take exactly what we're saying and just do it themselves and get a ton of value without ever working with us. But the average person is not going to spend the time to do it. And so they'll be like, oh my gosh, I watched this 60-minute video, and I'm like, I don't want to do all those steps. Like, this is going to be so much work. Let's just pay these people to do it. And so that's sort of like the bar, because you could argue that video told me exactly what I need to do. It gave me all the stuff I would need to buy at the store, exactly how to cover up all the holes, exactly how to clean and sanitize. So it's like, I could have done it myself, but they wouldn't have lost me as a customer, because I'm like, I don't have time to do this.
So that ultimately means people don't pay for the knowledge, but they pay for the execution and the implementation of it.
Yeah. Agreed.
Fair. That makes a lot of sense. Now I have last two questions for you guys, and then we can wrap this up. First one is another misconception, or maybe you could say like a pushback, right? Founders, when they're trying to create content on LinkedIn, build their founder brands for their business, they say, we don't feel like we should be spending time on LinkedIn. We would rather spend that time running the business itself. They almost see it as an option, not as a necessity for their business. What would you guys say to that?
Yeah, so that may be true in some circumstances. Most of the folks we talk to that are considering posting on LinkedIn, that's where their customers are. So when a founder says, hey, I don't want to be on LinkedIn, I want to run the business, and their customers are on LinkedIn, they're kidding themselves. Like, wait, no, like, go spend the most time you can with your customers. And in our case, most of our market is on LinkedIn. And so while we're spending time on comments and DMs and creating content, some are like, oh, that's all just this. It's like, no, that's time spent interacting with our customers and learning what they care about. And so that's how we view it. If you want to go work on the business, and we see a lot of founders do this, they want to go optimize the processes and do all this other stuff, anything but spend time with their customers where things are hard and painful and changing. That to me is just not a good founder. They're not willing to put in the hard work that is actually going to get them customers and help them learn more about the problem they're solving.
And I would though, even like, to what Rob is saying, I also think that LinkedIn it's not always the right strategy for every company. There's an alternate universe where we never did LinkedIn. We figured out the service, and we used that report outbound strategy that Rob and the other guy we were working with came up with to great success. Like, there's an argument to be made that if me and Rob were going to start a side business, because we've already used our LinkedIn for this one, we could create a pretty successful business without ever posting any content at all using this other strategy. They're all just channels, right? And so to your first point where you were like, will founders, when they say, I don't want to post on LinkedIn because I want to work on the business, they're really just saying, I don't want to focus on distribution. I want to focus on the product. And that's an age-old struggle of every founder in every industry. It's like, I don't want to think about how am I going to get new clients. And so whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's outbound, cold outbound, right? Whether it's trade shows, whatever the channel is that you choose, every founder who doesn't want to engage in the distribution side is kind of screwed. But again,
are they really a founder? Is my question.
Really
aggressive question.
Yeah, and Rob has said that before, and I think it's probably the right thing to say. So like, to me, it's like, as long as you're doing some sort of distribution strategy that is giving you success, it doesn't have to be LinkedIn. But that being said, I do think that for people who are willing to try to crack LinkedIn, it probably has the best return on investment of any of the channels out there at this point. Like you said at the beginning, 11 million, 12 million impressions. You, as a founder, likely cannot afford ads to give you 12 million impressions, right? It is such an overpowered tactic right now. And will it always be that way? Probably not. It'll get oversaturated, stop working as well. We'll need to go somewhere else. Like TikTok came out, everyone flocked there when it was really doing similar, but then TikTok became so oversaturated, it doesn't really work anymore. So we always are going to have to find new channels. Right now, LinkedIn organic is still a very powerful channel, even for people starting. Like I said before, my brother started 4 or 5 months ago and is finding great success. So if you are willing to crack it, to spend the time, I do think it will give you the biggest bang for your buck of any of the channels available.
Love that. And before I move on to my last question, I think LinkedIn really is, at the end of the day, not I think, but it is just a touch point in your buyer's journey, isn't it? If somebody's trying to discover you, LinkedIn is a part of that buyer's journey. And if you're already there, you've established yourself, then it's just an extra layer of credibility. I really believe it comes down to that. Now, my last question to you guys is, the way you two create content, it doesn't feel like it was premeditated and there was a huge strategy behind it. It feels like you're just documenting your journey. Whatever you do with your clients, you just put it out there like, hey, we've done this, XYZ, here it is. So is that how you guys approach your content creation, or is there like a separate strategy behind it?
Chaos is very much what we embrace in our content strategy. And it cuts both ways, right? Because it puts a lot of pressure on us to figure out, what do we post about? What's the new idea? That said, I think it's what also makes the content really strong and believable. It's like we're speaking through first-person experiences. I did a post about this before. Effectively, what we're doing is gathering insights of what people are trying and doing, using the work with hundreds of founders and exposure to all these things and industries that we see. And then a big part of it is Anthony and I debating out what the insights and best practices are. And we are documenting that, but it's interesting, the documentation for us, and you'll see this in a lot of our posts, the assets we share on LinkedIn are usually our service assets. Like, we create things that are going to help founders in, say, a workshop that we're running, understand a concept to be able to make a decision better relative to their positioning. And almost the litmus test is, does it work live in a session? Like, did that make sense? And can I get Anthony to understand what I'm trying to get across? Can he get me to understand what he's trying to say? And then if it works, then sharing it openly is like, there's an argument to be made that it's already been vetted of like, oh, it's top quality because we know
you're
it
just
works.
amplifying it.
So no strategy. I think what drives our ability to have no strategy is because our positioning strategy is so clear. We already know exactly what problem we solve, and it's this one very narrow, small thing. And so as long as everything's tied to that, like, we don't have to get too like creative with content strategy. Simply talk about that problem and how we solve it. Anthony, I don't know if you have a add on to that.
Yeah, and there were two like general principles that we sort of went by at the beginning from another creator named Wes Ko. She had these two concepts. She called it the super specific how and the spiky opinion. And she was like, all your content should be one of those two things. It should either be a super specific how-to, here's how to write a homepage, here's how to figure out your positioning, something like that, at a really, really great degree of detail. Or the spiky opinion, which is more about your POV. And it should be differentiated. It should be spiky, meaning like kind of controversial. Not just like hot takes for hot takes, but like for us,
not just for the sake of it. Yeah,
exactly. Like, I just was on LinkedIn and I saw a post that said, sell the benefit, not the feature. And in B2B world, that usually means talk about the business outcome, not any of the mechanisms to achieve the business outcome, which is why 99% of all B2B websites say something along the lines of boost your revenue, increase your ROI, whatever, in the main headline and body text. And we just discovered that was the source of all the confusion. The reason nobody can figure out what the heck your software does is because all you're doing is talking about outcomes and not actually explaining how do we achieve these outcomes. And people are not reading websites to figure out what outcomes you can drive. They're actually reading the website to figure out how do you deliver those outcomes. What does the software actually do? Is it even going to cover the use cases that I would need it to cover? And most websites don't answer that. So when we post and say you actually shouldn't lead with the benefit, it's very controversial, because the post I saw that said just, like an hour ago, sell the benefit, not a feature, had 5,000 likes, hundreds of reposts. And it's like everyone just keeps regurgitating the same idea.
Exactly.
So our spiky opinion, which challenges that narrative, it stands out as people are scrolling and they see the opposite of the thing they always see. They go, whoa, this is interesting. And so the mix of those two content types really helps guide and has pretty much been most of what we do. And like another form of the POV posts, like when we do like memes or like, funny posts, they're still strengthening the point of view. Like when we point out the absurdity of how everyone does things over here, even in like meme format, it's still a spiky POV and helps get people to know where
it
to
still
put
has
you.
relevance, right?
Exactly. It's not like a silly meme for no reason.
Yeah.
It's trying in a new, entertaining way, point out how ridiculous it is to do it the old way.
Love that. I think that makes a lot of sense. Guys, thank you so much for this episode. It was fantastic. It was no bullshit. It was to the point. I absolutely love that. Thank you for being here. And I think people are going to learn a lot from this. I appreciate you guys' time. And had a great time. Hope you guys had the same.
Thanks so much
for having us.